Learning how to make corn fritters is easy. With my recipe, you can make delicious corn fritters from scratch. These fritters are great as a side dish or as a vegetarian meal for Meatless Monday. They're also great if you're looking for a quick and simple meal that's inexpensive, uses up odds and ends so that you don't have to waste food, or that uses up what you have on hand so that you don't have to go to the grocery store. I'm not sure if you saw my recipe video for corn zucchini fritters. If you haven't, be sure to check that one out. It's very similar, almost the same. Here I have some corn, one large ear of corn, 180 grams of kernels. That is a little over 6 ounces. I'd say about 1 1/4 cups to maybe 1 1/3 cup. You can use frozen, just make sure it's thawed, or you can use canned. Like I said, it's a little over 6 ounces. I did use a fresh ear of corn. And to show you how I removed the kernels, I took off the husks, then I stood this up in a bowl, and I just took my knife around the corn cob. Nice and simple. Like I said, this is currently uncooked, it is raw. Like every fritter recipe, this corn fritter recipe has a dry component. I'm doing 1/2 cup or 80 grams of stone ground cornmeal. You could also do all cornmeal if you want, because I am including 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour, 80 grams. So 80 grams and 80 grams. I like to do a combo of cornmeal and flour, but like I said, you could do a full cup of cornmeal, full cup of flour, polenta, whatever you have on hand. I am adding 2 eggs and 1/2 cup or 80 grams of non-fat Greek yogurt as a binding agent. You could add milk, evaporated milk, buttermilk. I really like tang in my cornbread, so that's why I'm going to use some Greek yogurt. I want this to be a full meal, so I'm also going to add 2 ounces of sharp cheddar cheese, about 60 grams. As you all know, in addition to being a Southern chef, I'm also an Argentine chef. So in this corn fritter recipe, I'm going to include some influences from the southern cone, the southern part of South America. Here I have about 50 grams of onion, 1/2 of a small onion, and I'm going to add some spices. The onion comes from Sopa Paraguaya. I talked about it in the corn casserole recipe. It's this type of cornbread from Paraguay and northern Argentina that has cheese and onions. It's good. And then the spices, I'm using a 1/4 teaspoon each of parsley, oregano, basil, black pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. This comes from pastel de choclo, which is it's like a shepherd's pie from Chile, and in the top, instead of having mashed potatoes, they put like a type of cornbread, for lack of a better way of describing it, on top. And in that corn layer, they add basil. I know it sounds odd, but it's really good. So that's why I'm adding the basil and the Italian seasoning. Like I said, that's not totally in line with a lot of southern corn fritter recipes, but that's the influence of the other culture from which I cook. So these corn fritters are really easy. All you have to do is mix everything together. So here is my cornmeal, stone ground cornmeal. If you have regular cornmeal, that's totally fine. My flour. If you have self-rising cornmeal or even self-rising flour, you could do that as well. Your fritters will be a bit puffier, but a lot of the southern corn fritter recipes, either they use self-rising cornmeal or flour, or they actually add baking powder. I'm not going to, because I don't think it's necessary, but if you want to do that, if you want to use self-rising or add some baking powder, I would add I don't know, maybe between half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of baking powder. The cheese. And for the spices, I'm going to crush them in my hand and then add them. You could definitely fry these if you wanted, but I'm going to bake them. So as I continue mixing this, I am going to preheat my oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. I started mixing the batter for the corn fritters, and as you can see, it's looking a bit dry. I think that's because zucchini has a lot of water in it, and since this is all corn, no zucchini, I'm going to have to add a little more moisture. Here I have slightly over a tablespoon of milk, about 18 grams. I'm using skim because that's what I have on hand, but you could use anything, I am sure. It might need another tablespoon or so of milk, but I just wanted to show you that when you're making corn fritters from scratch, your corn might be really fresh, it might be kind of dry, you use canned, you don't drain it as well, you use frozen. You might have to add a little bit more or a little bit less liquid than you had anticipated. My corn fritter batter is now ready. In addition to the half a cup of Greek yogurt and the 2 eggs that you saw at the beginning of the recipe, I added a total of 2 tablespoons of milk, 30 grams, and then I added another 40 grams of Greek yogurt plus 15 grams. So for the Greek yogurt, half a cup plus a quarter cup plus a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons of milk, and then the 2 eggs. We are learning how to make corn fritters together. So like I said, my fritter batter is now ready. You might have to adjust the liquid or the dry ingredients based on how much liquid is in your corn. That's why it's important to know what the batter should look like. It's nice and moist, but it's not soupy. When you scoop it, it should hold its shape. Here I have my baking pan. I sprayed it with canola oil. My oven is now preheated to 350 Fahrenheit. I'm going to take maybe I'd say 2 to 2.5, maybe 3 tablespoon scoops. And I'm just going to scoop these onto my baking sheet. And if they're kind of small, you can add to them. And then I'm going to take my spoon. Actually, yeah, I'll say 2.5 to 3 tablespoons, all depending upon how big you want them to be. I take my spoon and just flatten them down so that they're somewhere around 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 of an inch thick. These will go in to a 350 degree oven for 15 minutes. And before I put them in, I'm going to spray them with some more cooking spray. I just pulled the corn fritters out of the oven. They were in uncovered at 350 for 15 minutes. You can still hear the sizzle. These corn fritters made from scratch were super delicious. The sweetness of the corn and the onions, along with the saltiness of the cheese and the tanginess of the yogurt, gave these homemade fritters a really nice sweet and savory flavor combination. The spices that I added enhanced the flavor as well, especially the basil. Like I said earlier in the video, I knew that basil would be good in these because of the pastel de chocolo from South America. And honestly, I like adding basil to anything that's summery, whether they be some type of fritter or casseroles that have summery vegetables. What's really great about this fritter recipe is that even though I used fresh corn back over the summer, you can make these at any time of the year with frozen or canned corn. This recipe is really great because although you can fry these fritters, I bake them in the oven, so they're a lot healthier. Once you learn how to make corn fritters from scratch, I'm sure that you'll make these often as a snack or a vegetarian meal, perhaps on Meatless Monday. As always, Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.